little face.
Yeah.
I know. I know. I know.
Awesome. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And this afternoon, it looks like we are going to have a session about youth and the impact that we are having now, and what we need to do to make sure that we leave a planet that's thriving for our children and grandchildren. So it's very fitting because my granddaughter started me on this completely. I mean, I was working on the environment before she was born, but I was very depressed before she was born. I thought we were going to hell in a handbasket. I had given up completely on humanity. And then when she was born, I held her in my arms for the first time, and she looked up at me and smiled. And that was it. I was taken in. And she convinced me that she belongs exactly as she is, and humanity belongs exactly as we are. And so she told me, go find a story in which I belong. So that's what I set out to do. And the journey I've been on since then is just incredible. I'm so glad that you're all part of it. And it's an honor to be working with you all on this. So we are joined this afternoon by Ellen Dent and Amy Davis and Jane Velez-Mitchell. I think we had some of the most memorable lines in the movie. So thank you so much for joining us. So maybe we'll start by asking you to tell us what this movie has done for you and how are you dealing with the current situation. So let me start with Ellen.
Well, this movie really helped a lot of people get the idea that we have to change the way that we live in order to save our environment, in order to save the future for everything that we love, everything that we know and love. And when I did that speech that is in Countdown to Year Zero, I was actually pregnant with my daughter, Aria. And, I was scared. I was in a planned pregnancy, and I wanted to have a future for her. So I felt compelled to get up there when given the opportunity, thanks to Paige Parsons-Roach, who isn't on here, but was also in the film. She got me on stage. And I wanted to make sure that we drove home the message that you have to be vegan. If you're going to be an environmentalist, you absolutely have to be vegan. And so that's why we got up there. And Arya is actually here with us right now. Vegan baby. She's a little tired, but she's here. And so she was inside of me, and that's how I was able to get up there and say what I did, say my part. And I'm it was such an honor, and I think it was such an honor, and I felt that it was so important to be able to drive that message home. And this movie, this documentary made that possible.
You gave a great speech off the cuff. It was one of these environmental climate strike events where there was no vegan speaker, and we were trying by hook or by crook, and Paige managed to just say, let's have Ellen, and pulled her onto the stage, and you had no advance warning, and you gave such a great speech right off the top of your head, which was great.
It was out of desperation, like literally the desperation to get our message out there. Because a lot of times at these climate strikes, they don't say that message. They don't talk about veganism and the impact that animal agriculture is having on our environment. And I'm sure that's something more that Dr. Rao can talk about, because I'm not as qualified. But I really appreciate your research, Dr. Rao, and I believe in it. And I feel that everybody should know about that. And I'm really honored to be a part of this.
I'm honored to have you on. It's great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Amy, I think you had one of the most memorable lines in the movie when you told the animal agriculture industry they are done. Thank you for that. I think it really captured the moment, and I think they are feeling it now. I really see them having to close the slaughterhouses now, close factory farms, because it's become an epicenter for this virus. So tell us how this has impacted you and where you are now.
Well, it was, as Alan said, it was an honor to be a part of the film. So thank you for having me be a part of it. And it just is very inspiring to me to see more and more films out there for people out in the world to stumble upon and be educated, to be, to have their consciousness is raised up, and realize that they are one part of a whole and that their part is very important. It's just as critical as anyone else's part. So I'm happy to be a part of that platform, and I hope that my words spoke to someone, because not a lot of times do you get the chance to know what the future is going to be like and therefore act a different way now, so that when the future comes you can say, yeah, I'm a part of this. I'm not changing now that it's here and I have to, but because I saw this coming. And so we're telling people this is coming. Animal agriculture is collapsing. And that was before COVID-19. So this is even a bigger crack in their foundation. And I'm very grateful for that aspect of this pandemic. I wish it never existed in the first place. And I feel terrible for all of the people who have been traumatized and have lost loved ones over this because of this. But this is exactly the reason why we speak up, exactly the reason why we make films, to try to wake people up. We're trying to get them to see you can be a part of the solution. You can be a part of the reason why another pandemic never needs to happen. And so I'm inspired by all of the work that you all do and continue to do. And I believe that more and more people are seeing the truth, and they're going to change their lifestyles, change their diets, and become part of this new future where we have a foundation built on compassion instead of violence.
Yes, that's what we are all working for. And Jane beautifully captured everything. I mean, I had no idea that she was doing something like this. And she
Neither
sent
did
me.
I.
But you did an awesome job, Jane. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, that was fun. I was mentioning on the earlier share that I actually just started it because Anita had asked me to get some video when I was going to Costa Rica with Dr. Rao, one of 12 people who were going to see the reforested cattle ranch and how quickly and easily a cattle ranch can be reforested. And then what happened was everything coming out of Dr. Rao's mouth was so interesting that I just couldn't stop videotaping. And by the end of it, I had a lot of video and I didn't quite know what to do with. And then I ran into Jeff Adams, this great editor, videographer at the Hilton Head Veg Fest. And he was complaining about how he lived in North Carolina, didn't know a lot of vegans, and was really looking for something to be meaningful. And I was like, I'll put you to work and come out to Vegan World 2026. So he continued shooting after I had gotten the footage of Dr. Rao going to Costa Rica. And that was an amazing trip where we could see literally that you could take a lot of this farmland and this cattle ranching land and reforest it, and it's beautiful. That's what we need to do with the whole planet. If we stop eating animals, we won't need all this farmland. When you fly over the United States and all you see are, squares of wheat and grain and soy, we'll be able to reduce that down to a very little tiny percentage of our land and reforest the land and have wild land, and that way we will have habitat for animals to live. And we will also be able to begin reversing climate change because the trees sequester/absorb carbon. So I just find your vision, Dr. Rao, to be inspiring. And, you said before your granddaughter was born, you were depressed. And I don't really get depressed, but I do get infuriated with the behavior of otherwise intelligent people who cannot connect these very simple dots. And people who run hunger organizations who refuse to look at the fact that they shouldn't be serving meat. They shouldn't be eating meat. They shouldn't have meat at their galas. Hello, if it takes 8 to 25 pounds of grain to make 1 pound of beef, then obviously that's simple math. You don't even need to know geometry. It's just very simple math. And they refuse to do that simple math. So I feel like hearing your vision, Dr. Rao, always gives me hope, because you look at the really big picture. And the really big picture of this terrible pandemic is that this is nature forcing us to change. And almost like she has got a mind of her own and literally saying, we're going to close the slaughterhouses. And it's unbelievable. I mean, this started at a wet market, a slaughter market. And that was message number one that a lot of people didn't get. They didn't connect those dots. And you almost hear the wheels turning and saying, well, if that doesn't make sense, now I'm going to really show you. Now we're going to have it all through the slaughterhouses. And then our administration says, well, we're going to force those slaughterhouses to stay open. And we're going to use the Defense Protection Act and call it critical infrastructure. And we're going to make workers go into their deaths. And so now it's become a very big political issue. And the workers are like, wait a second, I'm going to die so that you can have a slice of bacon when you can eat something else. So now LULAC, the nation's largest Latino civil rights organization, has started Meatless May and Meatless Nation. And I did call Anita, and it was through Ellen, actually. Ellen Dent was the one who started the connection with LULAC. And I interviewed the Iowa State Director for LULAC, Joe Enriquez Henry, and he's very interested in collaborating with the SAVE movement and other organizations to promote plant-based food. And Main Street Vegan Academy is working with LULAC to show members how to eat plant-based and how to make delicious recipes. So, I mean, it's almost extraordinary how this is unfolding. And it's really important to see the positives and not just get weighed down by the negatives, like the idiotic articles that talk about, oh, these farmers, these poor farmers who love their animals so much are forced to kill them. And I had to call out one of the networks this week and say, is castration without anesthesia the way you show love if you really love these animals? But then after hearing the morning session, I thought about it, because we were talking about how now the farmers who are also being exploited are forced to kill the animals themselves, which they never did. They used to send them off to slaughter. So now they're coming into contact with what actually happens. And I think I'm going to reverse my opinion and say they are quite possibly grieving, because they had never really had to confront it before. They just could tell themselves, well, it's going to be food, bye, get on the truck, hasta la vista. And that's where their involvement with these pigs ended. Now they have to see it through to the end and actually kill these animals themselves. And it is difficult for them. And maybe that will convince them to get out of the business. But of course, we have to be there offering them an alternative, which is something that I know a lot of people are working on, but I don't believe that we're doing it fast enough. I think we really need to provide practical alternatives for these farmers to get into something else. And now it can't just be dragged on forever. I mean, we've got to say, you want out? Here's what you do, A, B, C, D. And I don't see that yet. I don't see a way for somebody who is in a chicken farm or a pig farm to be able to say, I hate this. I'm also being exploited. I want out. And then what do I do? Well, here's the answer. And I don't know, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there is an answer, but I haven't seen it laid out in a way that could be one-stop shopping for these farmers to make this transition and to be guided with a template they don't have to each farmer shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel figuring out how to do this. There's got to be some kind of just like you go to YouTube to find out how to do everything, we should be able to have a bunch of YouTube videos and tutorials and a booklet and a whole program that just shows them A, B, C, D. This is what you do.
Yeah, isn't that what Renee is doing at Ranch Advocacy Program?
She is, but I mean, she really needs help.
Right.
This has to be an effort. There are hundreds of thousands. I don't know how many farms, maybe somebody knows, but this has got to be something where we need everybody to get together and support her or work together. There could be various programs. There's enough farmers on this planet to have numerous programs. There's 181 slaughterhouses that are infected with COVID-19. There are thousands of farms. There's plenty of room for various programs to be operating. But I think that, obviously Renee can't do it alone. We need big organizations to get in there. And this is what they should be doing right now. These, the Humane Society, I have utmost respect for all these organizations, so I'm not calling anybody out, but I'm saying this is what needs to be done. The moment is now. We need to take advantage of this moment. And one thing I've learned is you don't take advantage of a moment, it goes away, and you don't get another opportunity.
Right.
There's a window of opportunity now. The farmers are seeing the horror of all this. And this is the time to go in there and say, here's what you can do instead. We're going to help you do it, A, B, C, D.
Right. I'm happy to see that Mercy for Animals is getting into this. They've started something called transformation. In fact, we were thinking of having like a conference around this topic in a couple of weeks. Inviting people to talk about, brainstorm again. It's about having a conversation and figuring out how are we going to do this transition administration when we don't have a government helping us with the transition administration. That's what the government should be doing right now. If we had a sensible government. Yeah, they're doing the opposite. They're trying to issue all these executive orders, targeting the slaughterhouses and making them stay open even though they don't want to. So if our government is not going to help us, the people have to do it. Right? So we have to figure out how to do it from the grassroots. But that's a great idea.
Well, I think that there's a lot of groups. There's another group as well, right, Amy? There's another, I went to a presentation where there's another group that's doing it. And I think that's great. The more, the merrier. I mean, we don't have one animal rights group. We have dozens and dozens.
Yeah, there's Refarm, just one other group I can think of right now. Refarm is helping farmers transition. There's also been talk about our tax money being utilized for these transformations as well. If we're going to be giving, some 30-something billion dollars to farmers and subsidies every year, it might as well be for them to change their farm from animal-based to plant-based.
Well, the big problem is that the government is the problem. I mean, the government is keeping these industries alive. Milk would literally almost be gone if it weren't for the government buying it all up now that kids aren't going to school and being forced to drink it. And they've got the cheese caves and they're buying up the milk. And it's not just, the administration, but it's also Democratic governments. Somebody told me that Governor Cuomo said, well, we'll buy the milk. There's a general, I don't know, honestly, what rock all these politicians have been under for, I don't know how many years, that they don't make the connection that milk is not a good thing. Either that or they're just completely morally bankrupt and kowtowing to the industry. Finally, Cory Booker and who's a vegan and Elizabeth Warren are coming up with a bill to end CAFO's, concentrated animal feeding operations. It's interesting because she didn't express any real affinity for this that I heard during the campaign. And others like Amy Klobuchar are constantly beating their chests about supporting the farmers and our farmers and our farmers, but not in a way of really supporting them. It's more like supporting the industry, the big industry. There's such consolidation in this industry. There's literally like 4 players that run the meat industry. It's Smithfield, JBS, Tyson, and there's one other. And this consolidation has created the problem because there's so much consolidation that, for example, with these slaughterhouses, they're massive, they're ginormous, and the COVID is spreading through them. So the other thing is that all of these companies are investing in plant-based meats. In fact, one of our great contributors, Carissa Krantz, who's a lawyer in Florida, who runs a vegan certification company called BVeg, just certified Ozo, which is the JBS vegan meat. And she tried it and she said she's vegan from birth. She said it tasted so much like meat, so meaty, that she couldn't eat it because she can't handle anything that tastes like meat. And she said it was like meat. And so right there, that is the largest meat producer in the world, JBS, a Brazilian-owned company. And they have made something that tastes just like meat. So maybe there's an opportunity to go to these giant meat companies and really say, look, the time has come. I mean, if they tell the administration, we don't want your help anymore, we're going to transition to plant-based, then the administration will, because the administration just does what industry tells it to do. It's no accident that after Tyson placed ads in all the papers in the United States, or the big papers, saying our food system is collapsing, that Donald Trump invoked the Defense Protection Act to create, to call slaughterhouses critical infrastructure. He didn't just wake up and decide to do that. He did that right after Tyson put all those ads in the paper. So if Tyson turns around and says, you know what, it's too much of a hassle killing all these animals. We are also, Tyson, we know, invested in Beyond Meat, then pulled out because they were developing their own meat, vegan meat. Maybe that's what we need to do. We need to get to the top people in these companies and just say, wake up. This is not going to help you down the long run. This is like, I always use the alcoholism metaphor. First it's fun, then it's fun with problems, then it's just problems. Animal agriculture for these companies is becoming just problems.
Right. They all need to listen to Amy, telling them they're going to go away if they don't change.
Exactly. And to what you're saying, Jane, I know there are organizations out there that are approaching these big food companies and asking them to divert some of their money to exploring the plant-based meat sector, and telling them that there's basically a guarantee that they'll either make the same amount of money for that same investment that they would have with animal flesh, but instead with plant-based meats, or they will make more money. And it's actually sustainable. It has a future. Plant-based food, whether it's a plant-based meat or just a plant, has a future in our food system. But our planet can't sustain the number of animals that we currently raise and slaughter for food, which is now surpassed 70 billion land animals per year. We can't sustain that. And so I'm excited for Cory Booker and Elizabeth Warren's bill for the primary fact that we cannot produce as much animal flesh without factory farms. So if they were actually able to start to dismantle these factory farms, people, consumers, would be forced to purchase less animal flesh. And the other thing that is exciting that might be coming from this is some of these slaughterhouse companies are actually looking into more robotics as part of their business, so that they have less people in the buildings doing the job, which means, okay, not as many people are going to be stuck in that system because these workers are oppressed as well, but also it's going to make everything cost more. So, because robotics are not cheap. So if they're able to install anything like that in the buildings, it's just going to make meat cost more money. And so all of these factors are hitting animal ag from every direction. And the government even though they're only listening to the people that are paying them, the lobbyists in industries, they can't continue to funnel tax money into a dying industry. Like there won't be enough money from American citizens to continue to support that act, especially as demand for animal-based products keeps falling.
I totally agree. And I think that, you look at what's happening with department stores today. There are the old school department stores who really refuse to change, like the Neiman Marcus is a perfect example, producing, insisting on selling fur when we go to marches all around Beverly Hills and we give awards to the companies that have given up fur. And it used to be mostly protests and one award. Now it's like so many awards, and the protests are going down because so many of the stores have switched to not selling fur. And then we get to needless markup, as I call it, Neiman Marcus, and there's the protest, and they just stubbornly refuse to change. And now they're going into bankruptcy. So they didn't stay hip to what the young people were into. And the young people are more likely to go to like Kitson, even if they have money, on Robertson and buy something funky and fun than to buy some disgusting fur coat or some old-fashioned high heel leather shoes. So they went out of date. And, it's very hard to see when you're going out of date in real time. You can look at things that used to be, everywhere, whether it's Woolworths. When I was a kid, I used to go to Horn and Hardart, where you put a quarter in, and then you pulled out something to eat. And of course, Horn and Hardart's part of history now, but Woolworths is also part of history. And so now Sears is going into, J.C. Penney, and so we're going into a new era. And the new era, I don't think, includes dead animals. And the question is, when is that moment where, like, Neiman Marcus could have changed even 10 years ago and said, you know what, we're making a lot of money now, but look at the trends. Look at what the kids are wearing. Let's change this up. And they didn't. So you can go from being very successful to very unsuccessful very quickly as a business. And I would be interested to hear what Dr. Rao has to say about that collapse, because right now, the meat companies, while they're investing in this meat alternative, they're still going full steam ahead on the animal agriculture. They haven't really, it's almost like they're putting their toe, in the water, but they haven't really embraced it the way they would need to really switch out.
Right. They are, their main objective with going with plant-based meat is to present this idea that you really need meat. You really need meat for your health, when we all know it's not true. Okay, but that idea that you can only get protein through meat or meat-like substances is something that they want to promote. So then they can always say, oh, that's fake stuff, so eat the real thing. We'll give you the real thing, but you can have the fake stuff if you want it, right? So then it always becomes like a secondary food source. The primary food source is always the real thing, right? So that's how they're trying to frame this story so they can continue. Because ultimately, without animal agriculture, this entire capitalist system dies. So we have to figure out how to do this, how to create a new way of living, a new economy, in which we are not exploiting people, we are not exploiting other animals. So when you stop exploiting animals, you're not going to exploit other people either. You can't. It's just not possible, right? So this is why, when we say we're going to stop exploiting animals, we have the responsibility to think up a new economic system in which you don't need any exploitation. So that's a whole another entire system, new theory you need to figure out. Okay, this is why it's much more fundamental. It's a transformation that's happening, in humanity. And it's inevitable. It's going to happen. And I mean, we have no choice but to figure it out as we go along. Because nature has done in 2 months what the climate movement have been trying to do for 30 years. I mean, it's just incredible, right? How fast she's changed our lifestyles and literally cut down the greenhouse gas emissions by 30%. So nature is very powerful. We have no choice but to come into alignment with nature. So if she's saying you're done with this phase, we are done with that phase. The more we fight it, the more pain and suffering we are going to get. And then we'll eventually change anyway. So why bother? So we might as well start now.
But I have a question for you, because your premise of Vegan World 2026 is that we have to pretty much transition. Doesn't mean every single person is 100% vegan, but we have to transition to a plant-based society where plant-based food would replace what is currently meat in grocery stores and restaurants, and that it would be primarily plant-based society. And the outlier would be the meat products, sort of the flipping of the equation. Now, we're only 6 years away from that. When we started this, we were 8 years away, or when I found out about you. So with the clock ticking, do you see us able to make that transition in time? I mean, we're talking about a race against time, and maybe what you're saying is that Mother Nature came in, did the math, and said, "Wow, at the rate they're going, they're not going to make it. I'm going to put an accelerator in there that's going to accelerate the transition to the plant-based world by 2026." And it's this pandemic. Do you think it can be this alone, or unfortunately, there's fear that other pandemics could come that will be even more severe than this one? I mean, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but can you give us some thoughts on the timeline?
Yeah, it is. At any given point in time, nature gives us a choice. So she does something like a pandemic, and then we have a choice as to how we want to react to that. We could react to that sensibly and say, let's cut out this entire animal agriculture industry and let's all go vegan voluntarily. So that's something we could do, but it's unlikely we will do that. Okay, at least our governments will not do that, right? So they're going to try. They're going to try coming up with a vaccine and all kinds of things, okay, to continue with the same paradigm. And then you're going to get a bigger pandemic. So when are you going to listen? But at some point, we are going to listen. There's no question that we are going to listen, because it's more and more people are going to come to our side. So their side is going to get smaller and smaller, and they have no choice, because their entire system depends upon constantly growing the economy. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen if more and more people come over to this side. So as their economy starts shrinking, then they're going to be fighting with each other for the scraps that are left behind, right? Because there's not much profit in the shrinking economy. So even these tech companies that are making money now, how long are they going to make money if people don't have employment? If 20% of the people don't have employment, they don't have a salary, so they're not going to buy anything. So eventually, overall, the GDP is going to shrink if you keep having employment like this. So unless we bring back the employment, unless we give people something to do and they get a salary for it, they're not going to spend. So we have an economy that's so dependent on spending and consumerism and so on, and it's not going to come back the same way that it was 2 months ago. So it is forcing us to rethink how we do things. Okay? And this is why I say I love thinking about this from the perspective of nature. So I imagine that nature is actually really, really smart, and we are the puppets. Okay? Then how would she do it? If we are the puppets and we're not listening, how would she do it? She'll probably send another pandemic until we listen. We are going to listen, because she already sent a bunch of pandemics before. We didn't listen. It's only after COVID-19 that we discovered that all these previous pandemics like cholera, typhoid, I mean, they all came from animals. You know, the 1918 flu came from animals. And so it is still with us, the same flu. That's the seasonal flu that we get. H1N1, H5N1, I mean, AIDS came from animals. All these diseases that we have suffered through came from animals. Only now is this becoming common knowledge. Previously, it wasn't common knowledge, right? So we were just, you know, figuring out a vaccine and moving along as if this is the only way to do it. So this is why they tell the story that, you know, you can only find protein in meat. If you can convince people that they have to eat meat, then the system continues. But as people begin to realize that they are actually healthier without eating meat, then the system fails.
Can you explain that a little bit more? Like, okay, so let's say people start, you know, it's sad, and we hope that these slaughterhouses close so these people don't die. I mean, none of us want to see. I think it's shameful to eat animals right now, knowing that somebody could have died for you to have your steak or whatever. Right. So people are getting this message as the situation continues to deteriorate in these slaughterhouses, because obviously if they're not doing massive testing, which they're not at the slaughterhouses, because they're afraid, this is according to the union leaders, that if they do test everybody, it'll come up pretty much overwhelming infected. And so it's going to get worse and worse. And then at a certain point, they might have to shut them down, even though it's critical infrastructure, unless they want to just send fresh people to their deaths. People who haven't been in the slaughterhouses, well, let's get another group of people to go in there and die. At a certain point, let's say, following your logic, the system, the animal agriculture system collapses, and we're seeing that partially happening now. There's a backlog of animals. It'd be interesting, you know, maybe some of you know what is happening with the forcible impregnation of animals for future, because unfortunately, even as they kill the animals that they have, they call it depopulation because they can't send them to the slaughterhouses. Presumably, they haven't stopped raping them into existence and impregnating other groups of animals. When is that going to kick in? And does anybody have any information about that?
Hi, Jane. You probably do too, Sailesh, but somebody was speaking on the program a few weeks ago about one rancher who is going ahead and planning ahead. He thinks it's going to go over. So he's already ordering more baby pigs so that he can be ready even after he's killed a bunch. I got the impression that others were waiting to see. Do you remember? Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that was from, I think it was Larry Baldwin who spoke about that in North Carolina. And he's saying, because these people don't know what else to do. This is their business, you know, this is their livelihood. So they had to kill these animals. They're getting no money from these animals. And they're saying, okay, maybe if I have another fresh batch in 3 months, it may change. So by the time my new animals, you know, grow up, I may be able to sell them. So people are just guessing as to what will happen, you know, in the future. But to me, it is either we listen now, and I mean, but to listen now, it means that we have to work on this new system and make it available to people. So we have to make going plant-based and having a plant-based economy should become a no-brainer. You know, people should see that there is a future for everyone in a plant-based economy, that it's a thriving economy for all. And so that to me is job one for us now as vegans. We have to figure this out. No one else is going to do this for us. We have to do this ourselves.
Do you think some, though, are holding off and waiting and saying, I would assume some would have to, considering that the news reports are that this could come back in the fall, that this is something that's going to go like this and come back for even a couple of years, you got to wonder if some of these farmers are saying, well, maybe I'll hold off on inseminating a whole new bunch of animals since I just killed these animals in depopulation. I can't imagine that some haven't said, well, I'm not going to order more because I may not be able to do anything with them. I would hope.
This is why, this is why Renee was saying in the morning that she's getting so many emails from farmers saying they want a way out. Right? They all want a way out. So, I mean, people are looking for a way out, but until we show them a way out and give them a way out, they're going to do what they have been doing all along. You know, ordering the next batch of animals.
So what's the priority? Do you think or do both? Obviously, both. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, the priority, I mean, it's a bit chaotic at the moment, but we have to keep stepping forward to see how we can get to a system that's based on truth and love and justice. You know, we are implementing Martin Luther King's dream. So that dream that never got realized. I mean, basically, we have to implement it. And now we have the tools and technologies to do that, whereas in the past we probably didn't. You know, it was harder to do it then.
Well, part of the problem that I see, the challenge that I see, is that we talk about this, but there's got to be, it's kind of like similar to people talking about, yeah, we need testing, and then it just doesn't happen. I mean, we in the vegan community talk about transitioning these farmers. We talk about them having another option, but I don't think it's moving fast enough. I think we really need to accelerate it. And we need the big guns. No, that's not a good phrase to use. We need the big players in this space to come in and do it together and create programs like Renee, and because I'm on the board of Variety Girl Sanctuary, and we had talked about making that. There's a couple of things we could do. First, we have to figure out what the process is and write it down and make videos about it and show, okay, anything you want to do, we got it. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, step 6. There's got to be something in writing. And then there's got to be videos. And then there could be, virtual goggles where you go to the farmers and you have a 3D program that they can watch, or just a series of videos, like an online seminar showing these farmers how to transition. I don't see that part being done. I see a lot of work, to reach out. Renee's doing a tremendous job basically a very small team to reach out to farmers and dialogue with them, but we need all hands on deck here with this. And I don't see that coming together.
I think part of that is also empowering our youths. So we need to also have our youths be a part of this dialogue. It's wonderful to have all the adults pushing as hard as we can, but we need our youths to rise up, because this is literally their future that they're fighting for. And part of that fight that we are having right now is with Youth Climate Save, which is led by Genesis Butler, who actually made the connection with LULAC. So LULAC, Joe Frederick, he reached out to Genesis because she's related to Cesar Chavez. She's his great-great-grandniece. And he reached out to her and her mother, Danelle, and they're the ones who made the connection with you and with Anita, because they're actually starting a youth movement underneath the SAVE movement that's called Youth Climate Save. And it's a movement that's going to bring animal agriculture to the table, to the dialogue with all of the youth, with all of the adults. There's already over 46 chapters worldwide in about a month, just a little bit over a month. That many youth have stood up, and they want this this opportunity. A lot of them have never done any activism before, but they want a chance to fight for their futures. And I think that it's our responsibility to give that to them.
That's a great point, Ellen. Thank you. Yeah, it is. And again, I think a lot of the resources that Jane is looking for are available. It's just it hasn't been collated. It hasn't been put together in one place. There are videos from Sadhana Forest, that's showing how to do veganic agriculture. There are videos. I mean, they've actually shown, from their forest how they did it. So you can then collect that with videos that other people have done and papers that other people have done. We have to put it all together, maybe in a website, so people can see these are the options that are available to you if you wanted to switch from animal farming to plant farming. That's something that we could probably take up on Basecamp also.
That's a great idea. And then, if you want more information, you could go to Renee or you could go to one of the other groups to get some personal one-on-one, support. But yeah, it's a question of, you're absolutely right, Dr. Rao, you just hit on it. I think we all try to build things from the ground up, and sometimes it's like, no, we don't have time for that. We've got a deadline, and I know that nothing ever gets done without a deadline. That's why journalism is all about deadlines. Without a deadline, nothing gets done, because you always have tomorrow. So, I mean, I really feel that should be priority number one. Is it getting everybody together, getting all these videos, seeking approval to put them on one site and saying, farmers, here, this will give you a start. This is where you go. I mean, if this is the most important thing, it's crazy that we don't have an online resource where they can go. And I think everybody was thinking initially at, we're going to create something and physical, but in this world, you don't need to create something physical. Just make it online. I mean, everything can go online, and then it's cheaper. You get, you can promote it. And I think it's a great idea. I just think that it's too bad Renee's not on with this call, because this would be something that, she could also get involved with, but I'll talk to her about it. But
yeah, she'd be the best person to host it on RAP if we can get all the videos on RAP.
She needs help. She's got veganic gardening. She's got, I don't know how many animals now that she's got to feed every day. She's got all sorts of things she has to do. There's no way that she can do this alone. Somebody needs to create the architecture, find the videos, find the information, create the website, and then it can be done. What I'd see is almost like a partnership. We're fighting a situation locally that's terrible for animals, and there's an umbrella coalition, essentially, groups that are in opposition to it. They can all be listed. Everybody can be listed. Let's just create a website. It doesn't have to be owned by anybody. It's just, let's transition farmers now. Farmers, we could even create it right now and just buy the URL and do it. It needs to be done quickly. I will say that, having worked in the news business where everything had to be done yesterday and the deadlines were really tight, I see that we take too long to do things in our movement. I think perfection is wonderful, but done beats perfect. And we have a tendency to discuss things ad nauseum instead of just doing them right away. And sure, are they going to be as good as if we discussed it for 5 years? No, but this should be done immediately. And I'll tell you something. And I used to say this to journalism students when I spoke to them. I said, because I had an unusual situation where I was stalked in college, and all through high school and college by a guy. And at one point he threatened to kill me, and I was terrified. And I was a big party animal. I was going out every night dancing, and, all of a sudden I realized I'm not going to be able to leave New York until I get a job. and I went to the other extreme, and I was one of the only people in my graduating class at NYU to get an on-camera job. Why? Not because I'm so fantastic. I thought my parents didn't understand really. If I don't get a job, this is a life or death situation. So I always say to the kids that I talk to, if somebody said they were going to put a bullet through your head if you don't do XYZ by the end of the day, how would you do it differently? And so what we need to realize is this is a life or death situation for our friggin' planet. We need to create this website and start building it now. Enough with the yakety, yakety, yak. It's not as complicated as sending somebody to the moon. It's not as complicated as designing the internet. It's a simple website that tells farmers, you're making chickens now, here's how you make mushrooms. You're growing pigs now, here's how you do something else. I understand there's a lot of complexity. When we were dealing with one of the farms, and this I'm just getting through secondhand knowledge, there are a lot of issues regarding, for example, chicken farms. They look very identical, the warehouses to mushroom farms, but because chickens are sprayed with chemicals and fed antibiotics and they're living in their own feces and their urine, there's a big expense of cleaning out the warehouses so that they're usable for growing something else. There are details, there are complexities, there are challenges. It's not like a farmer's going to be able to wake up one day and go, oh, I was making chickens, boom, I'm going to be making mushrooms. No, but no matter how complex it is, as Dr. Rao knows, there's an A, B, C, D. We just have to break it down. We have to break it down. And I don't think there's anybody better qualified than the people at Vegan World 2026. Whereas we've determined that this is one of the number one things, along with getting consumers to demand plant-based. And whereas the time frame has accelerated because this is the window of opportunity to transition farmers, wherefore we need to do it yesterday. And I know that if somebody said all of you will die if this website is not done by the end of this week, it would be done. So whatever we have to do, we should get it done. We can always improve it, but the basics of it need to be put together immediately. We can't wait any longer. And I'm not trying to just give a lecture here. I really feel frustrated. It's 2 years already that I've been hearing discussions about transitioning farmers, and I'm sure it's been happening with one or two, but there's millions of farmers out there. We need a booklet. We need a template. We need to show people how to do this. Enough.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Can I say something about what somebody just posted on Facebook? Renee Marekovich said, in what ways are cattle ranchers encouraged to transition? So it ties right in with, having something for them to do, but then encouraging them. What are your comments on that question?
Well, now nature is encouraging them because there's nowhere, the places where they would normally slaughter their cattle, or there's a backlog, there's a bottleneck. So as long as that bottleneck is open, it's a window of opportunity for us to go in there and say, hey, here's something else you can do. We have to take advantage of it.
I think it's on the chat also, that from Vince Tucker. It says Animal Fairness Alliance, which is connected to Vegan Justice League, has hired a lobbyist in Washington, D.C. They're promoting legislation to end animal ag subsidies and help willing farmers transition to plant-based agriculture. And AFA promotes Booker's bill. So
that's all great, but the legislation takes a while. And I just feel like, Dr. Rao, you hit the nail on the head. The information's out there. It's a matter of collating it and bringing it together. This reminds me of the time, as you know, Ellen, you were right there, when I lost it at the Climate Healers because we couldn't get anybody to say anything about animal agriculture.
Climate strike.
What?
Climate strike. Yeah. Not at Climate Healers, climate strike.
Climate strike. My bad. Sorry, I apologize.
No
at the climate strike, and I got angry. And it's never a good thing. But I was so frustrated. And the next day, I happened to be doing an interview with Dr. Rao, and I expressed my frustration and how I got into arguments with people, and it was a bleep show. It was terrible. And then I said, somebody's got to do a white paper. Until we prove it's the leading cause of climate change, nothing's going to happen. Well, guess what? Dr. Rao produced a white paper. You said that day, well, I've been waiting for somebody to do it, but I'm perfectly positioned. I'm going to make it. And boom, you made it happen. You created a white paper that's now being peer reviewed and hopefully will be published in a scientific journal, which I've sent to, I don't know how many people. I wrote a long email to Rachel Maddow and I put it in there. And I said, please read the white paper before you dismiss its conclusions. What if he is right? So I'm saying now that maybe this, I'm saying it again. I'm at that level where I'm, we've got to do this. We got to create this website.
We all have to work together too. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. We all have to work together as organizations. I feel like we get so stuck in our brand and our name that we're not working together. And if we all work together, we would be able to get so much more change done so much quicker. And I think there's a lot of infighting and a lot of drama in the movement, and we're focusing on the wrong thing. We're fighting with each other when we have a much larger nemesis to contend with. So I think that website would be done by now if we all work together. And if we all just, kind of set ourselves aside, our egos aside, and we worked together, like bottom line. Like we put out a couple of petitions with Slaughter Free Chicago, started Slaughter Free Chicago at Slaughter Free Cities. They have a chapter in New York. We started one in LA because we want to work together. And so I hope people will sign our petitions. We're really getting signatures because the other bigger organizations say it's not big enough for them to work with it. And it's exactly what we're all trying to do together. And so it's very frustrating for me that we're not getting this done because we are not working together, bottom line. So, Amy just popped on. We've been working together with Animal Alliance Network and LA Animal Save to get these petitions out there under the Slaughter Free campaign to show this coalition, to show this strength together as big animal rights organizations that can work together. I guess we're probably smaller in the bigger scope of things, but we also want to work with Vegan Justice League. I reached out to Connie Spence. We're working with the SAVE movement, which is huge. We are part of the SAVE movement, and the SAVE movement also wants to work with Vegan Justice League, and I'm sure the AFA as well. I don't know, that's just where I'm coming from, is just this frustration with all of us not coming together. And I'm trying to share all the information with all these other organizations. I'm giving them my sources from the slaughterhouses. I'm giving them anything I can in order to push our movement forward. So hopefully somebody can help Renee make that website so that we can help these farmers find another way. Because they've wanted out of this for a long time. They've been stuck in these loans. They've been stuck. The government's put them in these horrible positions well before this pandemic. And I think that Mother Nature is smarter than we are. And that is what she's showing us with this pandemic, that if we are not going to handle this ourselves, then she is going to.
Right. We'll get on it. We'll get on it. I'll bring it up with the community at Vegan World 2026. And we'll get a website for Renee up and running.
Yeah, we have to do this together. That's the only way.
There is a lot of information already out there. Sadhana Forest, Aviram Rosen is on Basecamp as well. So I'll reach out to him and see if he can take their videos and put it up on Renee's website.
Yeah, because I share Jane's frustration. I've been to several of these climate strikes where veganism either was barely uttered once or twice, and nothing about animal agriculture. And, you know, I left one time just almost in tears because Amy and I worked so hard to try to get Joaquin Phoenix to meet with Greta Thunberg. And he got stonewalled by her camp, and there were so many other celebrities and people back there that probably had already met her and everything. And she had her partner Sean Munson back there to film it. It was going to be this beautiful historical moment, and it didn't happen. And they said that they didn't want to mix worlds. And I was like, we're all in the same world here. We're all in the same predicament. And so why didn't this happen? So I was like, gosh, on the way home, all I wanted to do was cry. I was at the point where Jane was, where I just wanted to scream and pull my hair out. But instead of doing that, you know, the idea came to mind like, hey, maybe we need our own vegan youth movement. Maybe we need to empower our own youth to stand up, to rise up, and to fight for their futures and focus on what we need to be focusing on right now, which is exactly as you say, Dr. Sailesh Rao, is animal agriculture. Big oil comes later, but right now our biggest issue is animal agriculture, and that is what is destroying our environment.
Right. So it's fantastic that the Youth Climate Save came out of that frustration.
Yeah. I mean, same with the white paper. The same thing with Jane is like she came to you and got you to do your beautiful research that is going to be scientifically peer reviewed and become the facts for the whole world. And that's what her frustration led to. So we have to take that frustration and make something better come of it.
Yeah. And Amy, we were just talking about how, you know, we've been talking for a couple of years now about transitioning farmers, and there has been some progress and some work, but it's not happening fast enough. And then Dr. Rao said, what we need is a website that all the information is out there somewhere, right? And to collate all the information, whatever videos, whether it's YouTube videos, whatever papers, whatever, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but get it together in some way, shape, or form and put it out there and make it sort of an open source resource that people can add to and have a whole bunch of groups be part of it. Any group that wants to be part of it. And what do you think of that idea?
I think it's a great idea. I think one of the most significant things we could actually have on that website are testimonials from other farms that have transformed. I can think of one, Elmhurst Dairy. They were in the dairy business for over 100 years, and now they're in the plant milk business. So if we could have these other companies on there talking about their experience and giving advice to the other farms on how to transition, I think that it would not only be helpful and sort of this structure that these farms are looking for and the support financially, but it's in a financial planning way, it's also a mental and emotional support system. Like, look at these other companies that did it successfully. You can do it. You have support. We want you to have sustainable livelihoods. We want you to be able to produce food for the world like you have so much pride in doing. And so let's make it happen on a long-term basis, and let's make it healthy food that is good for everyone, the planet included, and just find a way to show all of these other farms who are struggling either silently because they're too embarrassed or ashamed or afraid to say it, or the farms that are going, hey, I've been saying this needs to change. This isn't right. Like, I can think of a couple of chicken farmers who are like, the way we're being treated by this big corporation that really owns us and owns the animals and owns everything, it is wrong. The way we're being treated is wrong. How can I be in business for 20 years and still be $1 million in debt to the corporation? So we want to be able to support those farmers and give them that access to the planning, the business planning required, and also the mental and emotional support.
Yeah, I think absolutely that you could have a chat line. You could have, and I think it could involve a lot of organizations. One of the things that I've seen with big organizations is that they have bureaucracies. And anything that happens has to go through a whole bureaucracy for it to happen. Even a tweet sometimes. And that doesn't mean they're not great organizations, but the larger an organization gets, the more layers there are. It's just the way it goes. So if there was a way to just do it and put the information out on a website, it doesn't even have to be connected to climate healers or to anything. You could just make up a name. That's what we did recently with another issue that I don't need to get into right now, but it's an animal related issue, and nobody wanted to particularly be associated with the actual thing. So somebody just created a website, and then everybody who was on the same side just put up their logos. So everybody's involved. And so there's no ownership of it. We have to get away from this idea that somebody owns the idea, or this is, 100% of nothing is nothing. So I think that, to be honest with you, climate healers would be great to start it, and then we could partner with all the people who are doing it, including Renee and everybody else. Because while you were gone, Amy, I was expressing my frustration that it's been more than 2 years that we've been talking about how we need to show how ranchers and farmers can transition. And we need to do it yesterday. This is the window of opportunity. This is when they're desperate. It's like, again, addiction. All addiction is a disease of amnesia. You do the intervention when somebody has a crisis, when they've cracked up their car, when they've made a fool of themselves at a party, when they've been arrested. Then you go in and you say, go to rehab. Once the crisis is passed and they realize they've survived, they go right back to the old behavior. So this is our window of opportunity to get to these ranchers and farmers and say, you have a chance. And I would bet that every single piece of information we need is somewhere on the internet. That all we need to do is find it and lay it out and say, here's what you do. And you could lay it out with 3 different groups: the chicken farmers, the pig farmers, and the cattle farmers, the animal farmers, and the dairy, 4 groups. And create a website and put all the information that's available there, and then add to it. Just like we add to you could do a WordPress site, and it doesn't have to be owned by anybody. But if we keep waiting for somebody to come along and do all this, it's bigger than any one person. So I would like to ask if everybody here is willing to be a part of it. I mean, we figure out a name, ranchers, transition out of animal agriculture, whatever you want to call it, farmers, farmer, whatever, we'll come up with a name, and then everybody can be a part of it. And it can be where people can contribute. If you find out something that is, wow, I've learned something, let me put that in. And people can put the information in as it becomes available. And I bet you, if we were told that we're all going to die if we didn't get this done by next Friday, it would be done.
Yeah, I mean, if we all work together and we took the branding off of things, it would be less of a distraction. So, that's why we're using the Slaughter Free campaign, because there's several groups. It doesn't belong to anyone. So that's why we're using that campaign in order to push our petitions, because we have to have some sort of name on there in order to make a petition, but it doesn't have to belong to any single group. So I think that's a wonderful idea to make this website and just really work together and have it be generic, because it's all part of the same goal and we all need to work together. So don't put any logos on anything. Just make it accessible to these farmers so that they can go on there and get any resources that they need, any help that they need. I'd also like to extend that to the slaughterhouse workers so they can find other places to work or find the resources that they need in order to find different places to be employed, because they don't want to work in these conditions. And I'm sure that they're fearing for their lives and they're afraid. And I think the same goes for the farmers, is that they feel trapped. They don't see another way. So it is our responsibility to make that other way apparent to them and to make it possible, make it an actual possibility that they can easily go onto a website, not even need to talk to anybody, and be able to access that information in order to start making that change.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I'll just use the example of something. There was a project, and about 6 people got together and just created a website. and it's a WordPress site. And within 1 week, it's pretty much ready to go. And there's no one group associated with it. The only thing it is a website. So what do you think about it, Dr. Rao? Because you have a way of making things happen.
It's a great idea, and we are going to get on it. And I think that we have been evaluating a tool called Kipwise, which allows people to edit things easily and then have a public face to it. So using that, I think we can have multiple editors come in and add things to the website as and when their experiences come along. It's called Kipwise, Kipwise.
Kipwise?
Yeah, KIP.
Oh,
I think Suzanne has been working on that. Suzanne and Benjamin have been looking at that. So these are platforms that allow people to add their own experiences easily. It's like a Wikipedia, for farmers, right? So you're creating a Wikipedia for collecting farming, the transition information, so to speak. So initially, I think we should put up all the test cases that we already know, like Elmer's Dairy, like what happened with the Renee's farm, what's happening with the Barrett's farm. And all those test cases should be there as examples. And then all the videos from Southern Forest. And I know that Greg Lightus has a bunch of videos on how to do organic farming. So all that can be collected. They're all available on YouTube. We just have to collect them and put it on one website. And so this becomes a great resource, I think, for farmers. And thank you for initiating that at this conversation.
I would like to donate to starting it, because one of the things that I realize is that until you do some kind of donation, it still remains a hypothetical. And then once somebody's put any kind of money on it, it becomes more real. So I personally would like to donate $500 so that the websites can be purchased and the WordPress can be purchased, and whoever needs to do the designing. Do you have a designer that you use, or do you do the designing, Dr. Rao?
So far on our websites, I've used Squarespace. So it has a number of nice templates. So I start with a template and then just add to it. Yeah. It's fairly easy to do a good looking website these days.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to do that because I just had this moment thinking about this with the frustration, like the frustration you felt, Ellen, and you felt, Amy, and I felt at the climate strike, where they wouldn't talk about animal agriculture, and just this frustration. And you're absolutely right, Ellen. Out of frustration, we start thinking outside the box and doing something. That's how the white paper happened. That's how you started the youth climate. You all started the youth all climate strike, the youth climate save movement. And those are brilliant. The youth climate save is a brilliant idea. And so I think this is a great idea. Open resource. And whichever organization wants to throw on information, go ahead.
Right.
Yeah, it's a project for everyone.
Right.
What should it be called?
I think there are a number of suggestions in the chat box.
Yeah, I can put one in there too.
Which was yours?
Farming for the Future.
Well, Future Farmers of America is a group that, part of the problem is we're dealing with Orwellian twisting of language, where they've taken a lot of the good stuff, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's like escape animal ag.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Something like very straightforward that farmers would be interested in. I don't think it can be, somebody had suggested the Great Transition. I think that's beautiful, but I think it's going to be right over a lot of the farmers' heads. What do you think, Amy?
Well, I like the name for the new youth lobby. Kids are getting into lobbying even though they're not old enough to vote, but that just shows how seriously they take our situation. And I think they're called the Youth Lobby for Animal-Free Farms. So that has a nice ring to it. I wonder if we could play on that name in some way. Animal-Free Farms, I think, is beautiful. It's just a beautiful phrase.
I love it.
I do too.
Love it.
We had somebody in the Facebook Renee, who says, why don't we get some entrepreneurs involved, some geniuses with some ideas to join up, and then also ask the farmers who have some experience in transitioning to join in. And she mentions that documentary called The Last Pig. So some more ideas are coming up.
Brilliant. I wish Renee would just join us again. You could be part of it. Join our, it's the same link that we used this morning. Yeah, I think this is a great idea. Open source. It's not any one organization. It comes together generically and everybody can use it.
Yeah, and I want the name to also encompass the slaughterhouse workers too. So it's not just the farms. So maybe instead of farm food, I don't know.
I don't know, but I think that, a website a title can't do everything. But I love the idea of there's still, because people's identity is they're farmers. You don't want them to say, oh, you're not going to be a farmer or make farming a dirty word. Animal-free farming, I think I just think that says it all. Because if there's animal-free farming, there's not going to be any slaughterhouses. I think that's, honestly, I don't know if it's taken, but that's a really good title.
Yeah, we'll check if it's taken or not.
This site can't be reached. It doesn't seem like it is.
Could be.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I think it really says it all. Yeah, it's available.
Awesome, good.
Jane's already making a website now.
Get it?
You can just buy it right now, right?
I'll buy it right now.
Yeah.
Then I'll give it to you, Dr. Rao.
Sure.
Yeah, why not? I mean, you get going on this. I think, as you said, they always say the hardest part of a journey is the first step. I have too many websites, so I definitely don't want to run it, and I have no expertise whatsoever, but it's a good name. It's a really good name. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have enough people on Basecamp to help us get it going, and I think it'll resonate with the community.
I've taken a lot of notes during this session of all the organizations we've brought up and the videos we want to include. And Jane, you've already recruited people from this call too. And we have a brainstorm from the audience that I want to bring up to get community members invested into the transition. We could do like a community supported agriculture, but for farmers that are transitioning. And that's from Kelly Wind, who wants to offer that idea for our brainstorm.
That's an awesome idea. If you can say that we will prefer CSAs from farmers who are transitioning, that gives them a definite source of income if they do plant agriculture. I'm sure we can connect them with vegan restaurants. The community can come together and support this transition to happen.
And yeah, I think it's a really great idea. And then you also create a Facebook page and a Twitter page and an Instagram page, and let these farmers feel like they're part of a community. The animal-free farmers. Mm-hmm. They're still farmers. And it could be good. I don't know if Willie Nelson or those guys are vegan, but they had a whole campaign where they would do concerts for the small farmer. Because who was it? Sonny Perdue, I forget his title, but one of the big agriculture, maybe the head of the agriculture department, said, get big or get out. He actually told these farmers, get big or get out. So they have zero respect for the actual farmers. Most of the people making money off farmers live in Manhattan. They're big business people who've never gotten their hands dirty ever. So these people are just being exploited. So this is great. I love it.
So it's incredible. We are building a new food system, just talking to each other.
Yeah.
This is how you get active from home.
Right.
You know, and everybody in the chat is a part of this too. So I think it's really important to have the community be a part of this brainstorming and to call them to action as well. I love it.
You know, some of the big ranchers that don't need any more money, if they were to buy into the dream, the story that we're telling, I mean, they could donate their land for sanctuaries, for back to wildlife, and get some credit for that, awards, that sort of thing, because that is one of the options for them. What do you think?
Yeah, for rewilding, right? So this is why we were looking for government support.
Mm-hmm.
For there should be a transition administration, really. You know, the government should be doing this, just like FDR did his transition administration during the last Great Depression. So we are going through something like that now. So we need the government to step in, you know, because that's where the resources are. Who knows? Maybe after November.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, both. Cross them all. Absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's great that Cory Booker and Elizabeth Warren brought up that bill, but it seems like the date's a little off, you know, pushing towards 2040. I'm like,
Right.
According to you, we have until 2026 here, so you got to speed that up.
Right, yeah. This is why, you know, when people talk about 2040, they're acknowledging that there is a problem, but they're really not yet offering a solution because it's not yet serious. Because 20 years out, you know, I mean, who knows what's going to happen to that legislation anyway in 20 years.
I also wonder if they chose 2040 as a way of not coming under direct immediate fire from animal ag itself, just saying, in the future, like, you know, as a way of just softening the blow, I think, or just testing the waters to see how much damage it would do to their own following support.
It's too soft. We don't have that much time, you know, according to, you know, year zero, even according to the UN, we do not have that much time, point blank period.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we need to feel the same sense of urgency that Jane is feeling now, you know, that needs to happen now as soon as possible. And I know Jane keeps using the word deadline, but I prefer to call it lifeline because this is really what it is. We are creating a lifeline for ourselves.
Yeah, it only takes a few people to get the ball rolling. So, and we need all the support that we can get. So if everyone could please share this Zoom, share the website when it comes out, share Climate Healers, you know, get on board. And, you know, we all have to support each other. Like us just on this Zoom call, we can't do this by ourselves. We need the power of our community behind us.
Well, I just bought animalfreefarming.org, animalfreefarming.com, and animalfreefarming.net, and it's all yours, Dr. Rao. Have fun with it.
Thank you. All done. You've done it. Okay. Definitely, we will put something up very quickly on it. And I think we were anyway thinking of having a conference, inviting people like Renee and Gene Power and all those who are working on this transformation to come together so we can discuss, you know, the test cases that have happened, and so we can collect the information, right? So and put our heads together in one Zoom call. So we are planning to do that anyway, not next Saturday, but the Saturday after that. So we will go ahead and schedule that and invite people.
That's awesome. And you already have the website.
Yes, we already have the website. So awesome.
Great work, Jane. It'd be great if the organizations also.
With the name. Amy came up with the name.
I didn't come up with the name. I was mentioning a new youth group that's called Youth Lobby for Animal-Free Farms.
Okay.
Yeah, but then it led to animal-free farming. Because it really says it all. It's like, it's not a negative. It's not like escape animal. It's a positive. Hey, you're still farming. It's just animal-free.
Right.
Yeah, and it'd be great to connect it to all the groups and have them have a link on their websites. Like, you know, get all the groups to put that link to that website on their website so that anybody going to their website sees it and goes there for those resources to help these farmers, to help slaughterhouse workers, to help anybody who's stuck in the animal agriculture industry, period.
Right.
Exactly.
And I know a lot of vegan nonprofits are working on this. They are working on to help people transition. It's just coordinating this and putting the information together.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think people are trying to build organizations that will help people transition, which is great. And I'm all for that. Like with the hundreds of thousands of farmers out there, there's more than enough room for many organizations to be involved and work with different farmers. But what you said, Dr. Rao, really hit the nail on the head, is that it's really about taking the information that's already out there and putting it in a digestible form in a central location where every one of those organizations could use it and contribute to it. This is something where if there's 25,000 videos on YouTube about how to put a microphone on your camera, there should be a resource center where you could get the information you need to get started. And then you can tell people, do you want to talk to somebody who's made this transition? Go to Renee King-Sonnen of Rowdy Girl Sanctuary, and she can help you, because she talks their language and they feel simpatico with her. Or if you want to talk to a company that's done this, you can go to this company and talk to them. So there's a lot of ways where this can just be, a central grant. It's not competing with anybody. All these organizations can still do exactly what they're doing.
Right.
It's like a resource center.
Yes.
So we could even relay it back to the organizations that are specializing in these programs and make it possible for them to come to that website and find those organizations and get involved in their programs as well.
And Bijou McCurdy says, I do agree that this name maintains the integrity of the farmer's identity, especially as a family generational identity.
Right.
Yeah, we love farmers. We want them to have booming, awesome businesses. Animal free.
Animal free. It's a play on the words too, because it does involve animals, but they are free. They're not being enslaved. Right? So these wild animals could be there too, right? Who would be coming out there and maybe eating some lettuce once in a while. Like Renee was saying this morning, right? The wild pigs come and eat her lettuce. But now they just let the wild pigs eat some lettuce. It doesn't matter.
Well, and then also if we're getting rid of animals back, and hopefully the predator populations will come back, which will bring balance to the other animals, like deer populations, and we'll find more balance instead of an absence of balance, just because of the extra land that's available for these animals to live and have their own ecosystems functioning properly.
Right.
Absolutely.
We need to save wildlife vertebrates as well. Exactly, as you say, Dr. Rao.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to reverse. I mean, because of the COVID-19 and the pause that it has put on human activities, wildlife is coming back in a lot of places. But at the same time, they're using this as a cover to go and destroy the Amazon even faster. So because someone is making money off of that, right? So people are not paying attention. So they pass all these laws and they go off and destroy more forests so they can extract money from that. So that's also happening. So, and for all those reasons, we need to reverse this completely. We need to think of a new way of living where you don't have to hurt animals. So if you don't have to hurt animals, we cannot hurt people either. So
Vince Tucker.
It's a place where, go ahead.
I just wanted to read this. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but Vince Tucker says, and farmers can still proudly say that they are feeding America. That is such a huge part of their identity. They can keep that, but do it in a way that is compassionate, environmentally sustainable, and healthy. I love that the farmers are being included in this movement. We really need to make this aspect of our advocacy a major part of our public narrative.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. We need to get maybe more farmers being interviewed on Jane Unchained, who have made the transition.
Or in big media outlets too. Yeah.
We can also have a closer look or a better focus on the workers in the fields that are harvesting the produce and making sure that all of these companies are utilizing fair labor laws and fair work practices, and that these workers have what they need, to be coming to work and being able to do the job, where they're bent over a lot of the time, picking this food from the ground. And so clearing out some of the major injustices that animal ag is just rife with clears the way for us to have time to then focus on the next worst problem, and that is protecting workers in the fields harvesting strawberries. We need to make sure that it's all, that these people are being fairly treated and enjoy their jobs. And so it just allows us to be able to bring more positive change in areas that need it as well.
Absolutely.
I agree, Amy. I think it's really important that we make the point that there's not going to be anything to profit from if we destroy everything. So we have to stop destroying everything. And that's really the bigger picture here, is if they're down in the Amazon, clearing out the Amazon, they're destroying their own profits in the future. So they need to stop, messing with nature, and we need to find a way to help nature flourish so that we'll have something to be rich with in the future, which is literally nature.
It's a great point, Ellen. And it makes me think of the fact that the people who should be most concerned, for example, about the declining fish populations should be the fishermen, because they can literally see the end of their job. And so they should be on the front lines going, this has to change. We need to either stop fishing, which would be the best thing, and find a way to put more energy and resources into the plant-based seafood investments and discoveries. Like they should be the ones saying, hey, I can see my job's going to end in just a few years. So somebody help, let's change this.
Yeah, 2050. Every type of fish that, people consume is supposed to be overfished by then, according to, Sea Shepherd Captain Paul Watson. So they need to keep that in mind as well. And they should be looking towards, like you said, the plant-based seafood, and then also cleaning up the ocean. Get some funding for that. Get the plastic out of there. We're going to have more plastic than fish if we don't already.
Right. So when you look at it systemically, it's like you're looking at a different system, right? So you're looking at a system in which people are spending their time and efforts cleaning up the ocean, cleaning up the forests, and regenerating forests. So that's where the resources, human resources, are going into. Even calling it resource is a bad idea. These are not human resources. These are people who are volunteering to go and do this kind of work. So to get that to happen, you need a system in which people feel secure. People feel like they can do this work because they want to, not because they have to, right? So this is why I tell the story of our community kitchen in Phoenix, where this couple who runs the kitchen, they create all this food and they give it away, literally, to the community. So it's a pay-as-you-can kitchen, right? So people come and have this meal, it's a pay-as-you-can meal, And at the end of the meal, people volunteer to go clean up the dishes, clean up the kitchen, clean up the floor, and mop the floor. And every week we ask for 6 volunteers for this, and you invariably get 6 volunteers to help do this work, and the work gets done. Though if we offered them $15 an hour and said, please clean up, I'll pay you $15 an hour, none of them would do it, because they really don't need to. The people who come there are not the ones who really desperately need a job, right? So we are showing by example that this can be done. You can create an economy in which volunteerism gets things done. And you just have to have an organization behind it showing, yeah, these are the things that need to get done. You need to wash the dishes, you need to clean up the floor, you need to go clean up the forest, you need to go clean up the rivers. And so, we need 20 people doing this, 40 people doing that, whatever it is. And you will get people volunteering, but they need to feel like they are part of this community and they do belong, which means they are being fed, they have shelter. So those things are taken care of automatically, So I'll tell you that when I was growing up in India, we used to go to someone's house and we would get fed. And we would go to someone's house without even announcing we are going to go. We can just go to someone's house and we'll get fed. Because this was the culture. The culture was the guest had to be taken care of first before you take care of yourself. So India, until the 17th or 18th century, India rarely had famine. People rarely went hungry because India is so fertile that things grow. So you can always feed yourself. There's no question that you could feed yourself. So there's no question that you could feed your neighbors. So no one really went hungry. And the British, when they were colonizing India, they discovered that they couldn't get the Indians to come and work because the Indians always had something to eat. So you cannot force them to work if you have something to eat, right? So then they came up with this bright idea to force Indians to start paying taxes in one kind of grain. So you had to pay taxes in just wheat or just rice. So which means you had to now do monocultures to pay the tax to the British. And when you have to grow monocultures, you're stuck. You cannot really feed yourself completely with the monoculture. So you're depending on trade at that point. So then you started having famines much more often. And then people are going hungry. And then they had laborers available to go cut down trees and build their ships because they needed ships to go fight the French. Right? And that's why they were in India, right? Because they had a big war going on in Europe. And they were looking for more ships to be built. So this is how monocultures became big. This is how we got into this industrial agriculture. Okay. Before that, there was no such thing as paying for food. We never paid for food. Food was always free. Food was always available in the community because someone would cook. That was their contribution to the community. Someone would cook meals for twice as many people in the family because they knew that the guest would come. And even in the cities, we used to have that culture that we would always cook extra because in case guests come, we had enough food. So that is the sort of abundance that we need to bring back to the world, right? So food is taken care of, shelter is taken care of, and then people will volunteer for all these other things that need to get done. Because that's what we need to do now. We need to clean up the oceans, we need to clean up the rivers and clean up the water. We need to start regenerating forests. These are all things that have no profit value in the current system. This is why there are no resources allocated for that.
What would you call that system? I mean, we're so hung up on the words capitalism, communism, socialism. As soon as you call something socialism, there's a bunch of people who will say, not that I'm particularly a socialist, I would say I'm more of an eco-capitalist if you don't kill the animals, if you don't destroy the forests, if you don't pollute the water or the sky, then you could have all the capitalism you want. And then don't exploit people. What does that leave you, though?
Right. Exactly, right? It's a different system altogether. It's not something that we have ever thought of before. So we've always had a system that's assumed that colonialism is built in, that someone has to rule over someone else. That has always been a given in so far. Yeah, you're right, Alan. It is utopia, but it is when you design something, you always design utopia. You always design saying, I'm going to make sure that there are no flaws in what I'm designing. Like whenever I designed a project, right, I never said I'm going to put a bug in it. A bug was there because I didn't think of something. And then I figured out how to solve that and cleaned up all the bugs. And ultimately, the whole thing worked as it was intended. So we have an intention now. Our intention is a vegan world, a world in which animals don't have to be exploited, which means people don't have to be exploited either. Okay. But in that intended world, then you have to create an economy in which people are fed, people are clothed, people are given shelter. So all those things have to be taken care of. The basic needs have to be met. And we have to be creative. People are given the freedom to be creative, to do things that they want to do. So it is a combination of free enterprise and socialism. What do you call that? It's something else.
In Europe, they call it democratic socialism, but it's not really.
Right.
But I think that I would like to ask you a provocative question, because we saw how the concept of from each according to his abilities to each according to his needs, the old communist system ended up with corruption. And we all know the horror stories of communism, whether it's in Russia or in Cuba, for example. I grew up with a lot of people who had fled Cuba with horror stories about what happened to them and their parents under the communist regime. So how would you tell people who are worried about the inherent problems of communism that how does your utopia differ from that system, which I think we've seen has many, many problems?
Right. I mean, a lot of people have tried in the past, right? Gandhi tried to do something like this, in India. He wanted something pretty much utopian. He wanted to have a village economy, not non-industrialized, all small scale. And then he also failed because he was thinking of creating a hierarchy using the same old caste system that was there. And people said, no, we don't like that either. We don't like this hierarchy built in where someone is telling someone else what to do. Okay. So that, I think, this is where I think you have to use technology to create the necessity, the map of necessities, the map of things that need to get done. So I'm imagining, like, because of technology now, we do have access to a lot of knowledge, a lot of wisdom from around the world that's available to us, and at the same time, we can create systems of volunteerism that will lead to things getting done. So we have to implement that and see that it is working. This is why I'm suggesting that we create. So I'm looking at money as a game. Okay. So money is a game, and currently the money game is played by a few people creating the money, and then creating the money in the form of loans and pulling it back. So this is why it's always going up to the top, right? So there is a lot of concentration of wealth that happens in the system because it's designed that way. That's the way it is. So you can now create another game in which you give people the tokens flow into everyone automatically, okay? And you get to use it in any way you want. But some of that you have to use for compassionate purposes. So if you use it for compassionate purposes, it is allowed, right? So it could be for animal sanctuaries. So you can devote some time to animal sanctuaries and you get more in your account when you do that. So it's like a point system, right, that encourages more and more compassionate acts. So I call this game Aquarius, and I wrote about it in the white paper, the Vegan World white paper. And in that game, you can play that game in parallel with the money game. It's not that game is completely independent of the money game. You can play that in parallel with the money game. And so what we ask people to do is voluntarily make sure that when you buy a product, you scan it and make sure that it is within your Aquarius limits. So it kind of tells you, if I had only Aquarius, this is how I would live. And is that okay? So based on that, you build more and more acceptance from people for the new game. Currently, you just play the game voluntarily. But as you have more and more acceptance for the new game, then eventually people will say, we don't want the old game. We'll just play the new game only. Because ultimately, money is a game. Money is a game that we inherited. It's a game that we inherited. We've never even discussed the rules. It's just come to us from our ancestors, right? This is the way it's always been played, right? And so we were born into it. And we are still playing the same old game, even though it is now destroying the planet. Right? So we have to now realize this is how, through games, we are able to coordinate our actions as a species. So it's important to play these games. We have to play a game in which we are doing what we need to do as a species. It's because we have this money game that we are coordinating the actions of 7.8 billion of us. But right now, the game is only enriching a few, right? But that's a skill that we have, the game playing skill that we have, that differentiates us from other primates. Chimpanzees cannot play this game, but we can. But we need to play this game now in a way that is beneficial to nature, in which we are actually doing the things that we need to do. So I use the analogy of Michelangelo sculpting David, right? So imagine after he's sculpting David, you find him trying to kill himself with a hammer and a chisel. And you stop him and say, why are you trying to kill yourself? You built a David, why are you trying to kill yourself? And he says, look at the mess I've made with the pieces of marble on the floor. How am I going to clean that up with a hammer and a chisel? Wouldn't you tell him at that point, you need a bucket and a shovel to clean that up? You need a different set of tools, but you have built the David that we can all enjoy. This is what the animals are telling us now. We have done something that the animals wanted all along, which is creating homeostasis for planet Earth, so that the Earth can never, ever go back to another ice age, right? So we have done something amazing that no other species could have done. And now the animals are waking us up saying, change your tools. If you change your tools, then we can all enjoy the David you have created. Okay? So we can then become the climate regulator species for the planet. We are the thermostat species for the planet. We have a role to play in the ecosystem. We always did. And because of this, once we internalize that within us, that we do have a role to play in the ecosystem. We always did. We have always been a part of nature. Now, this is what my granddaughter forced me to go and find, right? So when she said, I belong exactly as I am, I said, okay, then I have to figure out what the hell were we doing all along? Why were we destroying the planet, right? And then I discovered, the ice ages and what happened in the ice ages. 3 million years of ice ages where we had, most of the time the Earth was in an ice age. And it was cold. And it was very hard for animals to thrive in that, people to thrive, life to thrive. Okay. And then you had a short period of interglacial warm period. So 90,000 years of ice age and 10,000 years of a warm period. So we went through that so many times, and in that process, nature created us as a species. Nature created us as a species and put us in an environment of abject terror, because we don't run too fast, we don't climb too well, we don't have big claws, we don't have anything, we don't have any defenses. against predators. Okay, so we were sitting ducks, so to speak. And this forced us to create technology. This forced us to control fire and build weapons. And using that, we became smarter and smarter at using this material on Earth to protect ourselves. Okay, so then we became a predator species. From a prey species, we became a predator species.
Whoa.
And then 50,000 years ago, we formed a friendship with dogs, and they lent us their sense of smell and their sense of hearing. So that allowed us to become even more powerful, right? So then, in the current interglacial period, as soon as we came out of the Ice Age, we started agriculture. And by starting agriculture, we kept the temperature constant. So we prevented the Earth from going back to another Ice Age 5,000 years ago. We did something amazing. We created this David. Right? So that's the story I found after I started looking for it. And it was all there. The science was already there. It's just putting it together and saying, yes, nature made us do this. And nature is now waking us up saying, you're done with that phase. Now you have to become the butterfly species. So you have to move from so we were from a prey species, became a predator species, and now we are going to become a caretaker species. And that's the only way out for us. When you become a caretaker species, we are going to take care of the Earth. We can take care of all life. That will be our role. And we will all become vegan. And that's part of the vegan. That's why the vegan movement is beginning at this time. Gandhi tried to go vegan 100 years ago, and he couldn't. He couldn't. He even said in his speech in 1931, I tried to go vegan. He didn't use the word vegan, but he said, I gave up milk for 2 years, and then I felt sick, and my doctor told me to drink some milk, and I got better. So this is the greatest regret of my life, that I couldn't give up milk. He even said it's the greatest regret of my life. Okay, this is in a speech to the London Vegetarians Union in 1931. And he couldn't do that because at that time, they didn't even know about vitamin B12. So they had no supplements. They had no way of knowing that you need vitamin B12, and that comes from the soil. So they discovered that in the 1940s, and then we have now, we can make vitamin B12 in a factory. That happened in the 60s and the 70s. And so now, only then can veganism flourish. So veganism started flourishing after that was all found. So this is the right time for the world to go vegan. And this is the right time for my granddaughter to be born, to slap me around and wake me up. And so now tell me that, you have a job to do. You have to go create a vegan world for me by 2026. So I see this as a job we are doing for our children and our grandchildren. They're the boss. They have told us we need this for our future. And we have all the tools and technologies we need to create that. So it's our job to create that. This is just like the internet, It's another project, engineering project. To me, civilization is an engineering project. It's an implementation of a culture. So culture is the set of values that we want. Civilization is an implementation of that culture. And so far, we have messed up on the implementation, because the culture is great. All men are great, all beings are created equal. That's great. That's a great value to have. We are all entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's a great culture, great set of values. But the civilization, the implementation did not match the culture. And whenever that happens, that's an engineering problem. That means that you have some aspect of reality that you are missing, that you're lying to yourself about something or the other. And that's what we are trained to fix as engineers. As engineers, we build things that actually meet our specifications. That's our job. So how would you build a civilization that matches the culture? Well, it has to be a vegan civilization. It has to be volunteerism. It has to be all of these things. So that's part of the new white paper I wrote called the Vegan World White Paper. Please take a look at it and let's spread the word around. And I think it can be that it is possible today to implement a civilization that matches our culture.
I think that's great. I think that this has been very informative, and I think we went into action thanks to everybody's contributions. And we know what our mission is. Even within the Vegan World 2026, we have this submission. I know you have many submissions, but sometimes you have to have an emergency. This has to take precedence submission. It's kind of like if you have a house and you have a lot of things you want to do and fix this and get this, but your plumbing's broken, you got to work on the plumbing right now. And so it's like that. I think we have an emergency where really, if we could all put as much information, good information, into this website, that would be terrific. And thank you, Dr. Rao, for providing platforms where we get to brainstorm.
Absolutely. Thank you for brainstorming with me. This doesn't happen without a community. This is how collective intelligence is born, is when we have conversations with each other, because we each bring our own gifts to this conversation. And so that's how we all get wiser as a result of having conversations like this. And thank you for being part of it. And thank you, Deborah, for being part of it. Thank you, Rebecca, for being part of it. And thank you, Suzanne and Benjamin, for being part of it. It's such a great community that we are fostering at Climate Healers and Vegan World 2026.
Dr. Rao,
we have a job to do.
We do. Thank you. And for people who are watching live or replay that want to get on a mailing list or get in contact with Climate Healers so that they can know what's happening and where to go and contribute, how to contribute, where do they go?
You know, Deborah, you can tell them it's climatehealers.org, and you'll get a pop-up that shows up, and just click on it and fill the survey, and you'll be in. And you'll be part of the Vegan World 2026 project, and you'll get to meet all these cool, amazing people who are having a lot of activity on Basecamp. So you'll see that. And hello, Amy. What's her name?
Phoenix.
Phoenix. Oh, such a beautiful name. That's the city we live in.
Yeah.
So pretty.
Right.
How old is she now?
18 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
So she and Aria are the same age?
No, Aria is 4 months younger.
Oh,
So-
okay.
She's 11 months. She's gonna be a year this month. So, you know, these children are our future. These babies are our futures. And I was just in a complete trance while you were talking, Dr. Rao, just so you know. You're so profound.
Well,
And,
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of my speech that I gave on Countdown to Year Zero, it was, I said, we're not destroying the planet. Like, we're destroying the planet for ourselves and for every other living being on this planet. But this planet is going to survive us. So that's really the bottom line. The basic elements for life will still be there no matter what we do. And so the planet's just going to wait us out. So we will literally make ourselves and every other being on this planet extinct. But the planet will survive and it will flourish. And it will definitely flourish without our species on it. So we need to make ourselves worthy of being on this planet by doing what we need to do to protect it and to literally protect ourselves and every other living creature that lives on this planet.
Absolutely.
Well said.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's the role of the chrysalis. We are in the chrysalis. So we are now, we are being put in our little cocoons and told to think about what you have done and how are you going to behave when you get out. Right? So that's literally what's going on. We are in the chrysalis phase and we are going to come out as butterflies. There's no question in my mind. So we just have to keep at it and we'll get it done. And thank you so much, Jane, for the inspiration, for the website that you have bought, and we will work on it.
It's a group effort.
It's a group effort, yes, absolutely. And time to evolve is exactly time to evolve. Let's make this pinky promise happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I really feel once she came into my life, I really feel like I'm part of something much, much larger. I'm just a tool, an instrument in this, that there is a larger plan that's already at work and I'm going along. We are all part of it. And so I'm just watching the beauty evolve out of this.
Yeah.
And how incredible it will be, right? I mean, can you imagine talking about this 20 years from now?
Absolutely. Our children are a call to action.
Right, they are. Absolutely. They are. So thank you all very, very much. We will have this is recorded, so we will have it on both Climate Healers and on Facebook. So please feel free to share it with people so they can watch it. And once again, thank you for an amazing conversation.
Thank you.